In my last video I covered how I cleaned and oiled the combing and rubbing strake on my small wooden sailboat. In this video I plan to use the same products and process on the suspended oak floor, and I'll also cover why it's best to use silicone bronze screws on a wooden boat and why I'm going to squeeze into every screw hole a product called 4000 UV by 3M. The suspended oak floor is looking a bit grubby. I wanted to clean and oil the underside as well as the tops of the floor planks. Although some planks were screwed into the hull, the floor was mostly comprised of sections that were slotted into position and easy to lift. On removing a couple of subframes, I found that some of the screws weren't long enough to create a strong join between frame pieces and boards. I'd have to take the whole of the suspended floor apart, oil every piece all over, and replace the shorter screws with longer ones. The planks that were screwed to the floor had screw cups inserted. I managed to prise these out so that I could properly oil all of the exposed wood. I couldn't see that the screw holes had any sort of bedding compound or sealant added to prevent water ingress. I'll deal with this when I come to put the floor back. I numbered each section before taking it apart and took a photo. The floor planks are oak. They're finished in Deks Olje D1 by Owatrol. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a high-end marine-grade timber oil. It saturates and feeds the wood to replace lost oils. It drives out moisture and air present in the wood, enriching and stabilising it to provide long-lasting protection. It gives a clear, matte finish. The oak is in good condition but needs a clean to remove any dirt and other surface contamination before applying the D1. To do this, I'm going to use Deck Cleaner, also made by Owatrol. It's a powerful, biodegradable cleaner that removes surface grime while restoring a bright, vibrant look to the wood. Unlike bleach or chlorine-based cleaners, it doesn't damage wood fibres. Stir well before and during application. You can dilute Deck Cleaner up to 1 part cleaner and 4 parts water. The level of dilution depends on the condition of the wood. Use neat on grey, heavily weathered wood, and 1 to 4 for wood that's in good condition but needs a bit of a clean-up. Before applying Deck Cleaner, I wet the surface with fresh, clean water in my workshop sink. You can apply Deck Cleaner with a brush, but I find a fine Scotch-Brite pad works really well. After letting the Deck Cleaner solution do its magic for about 15 minutes, I rinsed it off with fresh clean water. After the clean boards have dried out for a couple of days, you can see how good they look compared with a board that hasn't been treated with Deck Cleaner. Before oiling the boards and supports, I attached some old screws to make it easy to handle and stand the pieces as they dried. Deks Olje D1 should be applied wet on wet, so you need to apply each coat before the previous coat has dried. Keep applying coats until you think the wood is saturated enough. I've found that the oak needed 4 coats. I also oiled the screw holes using a small brush. I left the oil to fully dry for a couple of days before putting everything back together. Into all the screw holes I'm going to squeeze a sealant and weak adhesive called 4000 UV by 3M to prevent water ingress. 4000 UV can be used above and below the waterline. It cures to form a rubbery, waterproof seal. It's flexible and dissipates the stresses caused by shock, vibration, swelling or shrinking. There are a variety of sealants and bedding compounds I could have used, but for this job 4000 UV is ideal. It's a weak adhesive, so I'll be able to easily remove the screws at a later date if I need to. As a general rule, I'd recommend the use of 4000 UV when you're likely to want to take things apart again at some point in the future. Super strong 3M 5200 when you are unlikely to ever want to take apart bonded items in the future. And butyl tape, also known as butyl putty, when you need to fill a gap above the waterline that's larger than a screw hole when fitting an eye bolt to a wooden deck, for example. I'm using silicone bronze wood screws. They're expensive compared with other types of screw, but they're the best choice for use in the corrosive marine environment. If that's the case, why do you see lots of modern boats decked out with stainless steel screws, fittings and bolts? Marine-grade stainless steel, known as 316, not to be confused with other grades of stainless steel, has great corrosion resistance when exposed to salt air. However, its corrosion resistance and the corrosion resistance of other alloys relies on an invisible protective passive layer that forms when the stainless steel is exposed to oxygen. If stainless steel is not exposed to oxygen, when screwed into wood for example, crevice corrosion can occur. Not only are silicon bronze screws highly resistant to corrosion both above and below the waterline, they weather and age beautifully to blend in naturally with timber. Don't confuse brass with bronze. Silicon bronze has way less zinc content than brass. Brass screws have their place in the interior of a boat for aesthetic purposes, and stainless steel screws have their place in areas above the waterline. However, below the waterline, and especially on a wooden boat, silicon bronze screws, nuts and bolts are a tried and tested ideal fastener. After putting the suspended oak floor back together, it looks rather splendid. I shouldn't have to work on it again for quite some time.